Hello, this is Michael Dombroski. This is my final presentation for Data-Driven Decision-Making final project for EDTC 615 for UMGC's Fall 2021 semester. Just an overview, talking about Venable's data action model. How can we use that to analyze student data, to help us analyze student data and make data-driven decisions to improve student performance in our classes? So we do this in 5 data meetings, but this is a process that never really ends. So there'll always be room to improve, more questions to ask, and learning and instructional gaps that need to be filled for our students. So starting with data meeting 1, we gather and review data. We make I notice and I wonder statements, and we start very broad with our observations about the data, developing exploratory questions and kind of taking a cursory overview of the data in groups with our stakeholders in that subject area. So you want to focus on specific standards and information with your data so that you can focus your goals as you move forward. So you want to look at your breakdown of data with instructional goals that are set. So you want to start with your student data, what you've gathered, breaking it down, making some observations, starting to kind of see some patterns, to see where students are excelling and where they're not doing as well. So color coding data in Excel, making graphs of some of the data, some line charts using Excel, and these are some graphs to give you some examples to show kind of patterns in student data across goals and objectives and the average class data. So we can start making some statements about what we notice and what we wonder about what we found from our student performance data. So making some I notice statements, like some things like individual students having score levels, similar score levels across all 3 objectives. I wonder statements like why the scores didn't seem to improve very much from one test to another. So these are the kind of statements we make in data meeting 1 in groups, and we keep these really broad, and any question, any notice, any I wonder is something that we can explore. And then eventually we get to our exploratory questions, where we kind of focus on what we're going to be looking at as we move forward in the data action plan. So are there better ways to assess student understanding? How do we improve student learning in these areas? How can instruction and assessment be differentiated so that we can increase understanding and mastery across goals and objectives? So then we move on to data meeting 2. Here we start triangulating data. We start identifying and gathering artifacts that can tell us things about our students and the data that we're gathering. And we can also complete an artifact tracking sheet at this point in data meeting 2. So identifying artifacts in data meeting 2, things like PowerSchool, iReady, Performance Matters, PARC, assessment tests, our calendar, our curriculum, our homework, our writing assignments, anything that we can use to examine student data is an example of an artifact that we can kind of gather. And here we start talking about whether or not these learning gaps and instructional gaps that we observe from these artifacts are significant or prominent as we work through this part of the process in our student data meetings. So in data meeting 3, we identify learning gaps, and we talk about identifying instructional gaps and goals, and then setting targeted learning goals, and then choosing an evaluation metric. So we want our targeted learning goal to be something that's measurable. So based on our student data, based on our exploratory question and what we've been working on, we want to figure out what our goal is. How are we saying that students need to, do they need to demonstrate growth? Do they need to show mastery? What percentage of students are going to be targeted? So what's the aim that we're looking for? And what is the goal that we have for our students to improve their scores from one test to another? Is it from the pre-test to the post-test? Are they improving scores? Are they demonstrating growth? Are they demonstrating mastery? Are they increasing to a particular level? So we're setting that goal at this point and coming up with our evaluation metric. So what assessment mechanism are we using from the pre-test data to the post-test to show that our instructional strategies that we've developed have worked? In data meeting 4, this is where we make our plans for action. So We're developing our specific strategies and activities that we're going to use to improve student performance, developing our data action plan, and creating our action plan tracking sheet. Using Venables, we talk about our planning protocol rubric. So we're kind of making suggestions and writing the strategies that we're talking about. So we're doing this in groups, in teacher groups, and identifying those strategies and how we're going to use them in the planning protocol as we move forward. So we create our action plan tracking sheet. We talk about who's going to do it. Is it going to be the teachers that are responsible for these things? Are we going to break these down into smaller student groups? Are they going to be larger groups? So what groups are we targeting for each strategy? At this point, we also want to do some research and we want to learn a little bit more. We don't want to keep doing the same thing because maybe those strategies haven't been working for our students. And to improve our student data, we want to research different ways that we can work with our students and use different instructional tactics. So how are we going to use these tactics? What are we going to do to show that they've improved? And how much time are we going to spend on these? And then we're going to have artifacts that we're going to use to verify whether or not, and give us evidence whether or not these are working to help us improve our student performance. So this is the kind of nitty-gritty part where we're really getting into how we're going to improve that student performance, what we're going to do with instruction, what the students are going to do, what the teachers are going to do, to really focus on these learning gaps and these instructional gaps that we found, and find a way to increase student learning and build them up to a point where we can meet that targeted learning goal. So we do that with our action plan, researching, using our PLC, using our support groups and the community in general, our educational learning community, to really focus on improving student performance. So at this point in data meeting 5, we've done our post-test, we've done our reteaching, we've gotten to the point now where we've got our data from our second or our final post-test, and we've done projects or tests to see whether or not we've had success. So we review our post-test data, we evaluate the success of that data action plan, were our goals met, what are the next steps. So we apply that end unit test or that end unit project data, and then we see, like, did we show improvement? Based on this data here, you can see that there was a marked improvement. Is this always going to be the case? No. So in this case, when we were working through this, we met our SMART learning goal, but that's not always going to be the case. So sometimes you will address all of the learning gaps. Other times you might need to look at it again and find a new way to find a way for the students to perform better. So in this case, the students performed significantly better, but in the case that they didn't, there would be other steps that we would take. So there would be next steps in the data action model. So if our SMART learning goals are met, we'd proceed to a new cycle of data analysis, return to data meeting 1 protocols, and start over again, maybe focusing on a different exploratory question. But at this point, we might also choose to use backward-looking data to revisit our original data and create new exploratory questions and address other areas in need of improvement. But if we've been unable to fill our learning gaps, we might review possible causes of our failure to reach that targeted goal and set new goals, review strategies, create new action plans to address and implement and evaluate student growth in extended data meetings like data meeting 6 and 7, according to Venables. Reflections and suggestions for improvements on the data meeting. My strengths are always organization, communication, being flexible, working and using technology to collaborate, share tools, strategies, and information. So these are the things that I feel are really important for conducting data meetings, and things that I do well. Something that is also very important, but I need improvement on, and something that we should focus on, is developing our PLC, researching new instructional strategies. That's vital to my continued growth as an educator, especially as I identify areas in need of improvement with my students and weaknesses in my own instruction. So doing more of that research and reaching out and beyond what I'm used to doing as a teacher, and finding those other strategies through research and through networking, that's something that really is great for improving in this data action plan. My final thoughts, we can use these protocols to collaboratively process student data and turn that analysis into a plan of action to improve student performance and evaluate the effectiveness of our teaching strategies. In the future, I also plan to be a leader in my workplace and suggest reviewing student data using the Venables data action model so we can really start to delve deeper into the meaning of our student data as we develop and search for strategies to improve student achievement. So this is all according to Venables and how we can turn data into action. Thank you.